Look, I know everybody talks trash about Gen Z, but I love to see this. Finally, a generation that realizes that work is not everything. Work doesn't need to be your identity. Trusting in corporate structures to find your happiness doesn't have to be a thing. No, instead you can prioritize living, having a life. Maybe it's having a family. Maybe it's traveling. Whatever it is, I love that finally there is a generation figuring out their own way. They're not just doing what their parents tell them to do or what they see society telling them to do. They are creating something new and something different. I personally been inspired by a lot of people who are Gen Z. I wouldn't even be on this app if it wasn't for several Gen Z creators that I know that told me about TikTok back in 2019. I've learned things like entrepreneurship, content creation, leadership, and really just finding your own way and figuring out what works best for you. So I love this, and I'm happy to see that the future of work is going to be different than what we've seen the past 30, 40 years.
Gen Z is prioritizing living over working because they've seen the legacy of broken promises in corporate America and the American dream. It has changed. You got to think about back in the 80s, the boomer generation, when they were pitched the American dream, it was juicy. It's not juicy today. Back in the day, they would say, go to school, get good grades, you get a higher education for like $5,000, work 40 years for 40 hours a week, and we're going to give you so much. Oh, well, what's in this package? Well, first of all, you're only going to have to work 40 hours a week. You're going to have your night and weekends. You're going to be able to hang out. You can have 2 or 3 kids. You're going to be able to afford a house. You're going to be able to own a house and pay it off in 30 years. It's only going to be about 18 to 20% of your income. It's going to be beautiful. In 40 years, we're going to give you a 401k pension or Social Security, whichever route you take. You're going to be able to take 2 weeks vacation. It's going to be beautiful. What do you say? You know what? I'm going to sign up for that. This sounds amazing. In 2024, let's see that same pitch. So this is the American dream. Absolutely. So if I work 40 hours a week for 40 years, I get to buy a house. Well, no, you can't afford a house anymore, but you can rent, but you do get food delivery and Netflix and a cell phone, so come on. Okay, so I'll rent forever, but at least college is cheap. No, college is $60,000. Well, wasn't that what my parents' house cost in the 80s? Okay, you're getting off track here, kids. First of all, it's because you're lazy and you're not working hard enough, okay? You need to work 40 hours a week for 40 years. Gen Z is prioritizing living over working.
Because the average life expectancy in America is 77 and the current presidential candidates are trying to bump the retirement age to 70. And it's not the best 7 years that you have left to live your life on retirement. Everyone has hypertension and is on Prozac. Gen Z has never got enough credit for assessing a situation correctly and then reacting accordingly. They absolutely should be prioritizing living. My little buco de beppo.
Gen Z is prioritizing living over work.
As they should, as we all should. And I've been saying that we should recognize the power that we have compared to these companies. If you're Gen Z or a millennial, then you have seen how nearly every system that we were taught that would be there to support us has failed us. The education system, the public health system, everything. So you got good grades, great. You got your degree, great. You're supposed to have a job that's going to be able to keep you in a house that's fed, keep you fed and keep you in a position where you're able to take a vacation at least once a year. But that's not the experience that we're having. It's not fun anymore. Was it ever fun? It's definitely not fun now. Right now, we're in a position where companies have the power. Unemployment rate has skyrocketed. This is where the power comes from. Where we spend our money, we saw what happened with Starbucks, and how we're choosing to stay informed of the companies that are laying people off and how we choose to educate ourselves and go about our job search and go about our lives.
You know, I really don't think Gen Z gets enough credit for being able to assess a situation for what it is and act accordingly, because that's exactly what they're doing by prioritizing living over working. Some of them are watching their grandparents, their parents, and even their eldest siblings suffer and not be able to enjoy their lives because they have to work. If you don't believe me that some people's grandparents are still in the workforce, let's just take a look at our president. Our president was born in 1942. World War II ended in 1945. So we have people who were born in the middle of World War II still in the workforce. Whether that's a choice or not, it does put into question whether those people are able to truly enjoy their lives. American businesses, or corporate America as we know it today, really started to boom after we won World War II. It's believed that the golden age of corporate America, when it really got its infrastructure, happened from 1945 to 1980. Now think about that. A lot of Gen Z's grandparents help formulate and cultivate the infrastructure of corporate America. And then they went to go tell their children, hey, work hard, climb the corporate ladder, do everything you need to do, and everything will be promised to you. You'll be able to buy a house. You'll be able to take vacations. You'll be able to retire at a reasonable age. And what did that generation do? They went to tell their children, and their children told their children. And now we have a generation that has watched all those people before them remain trapped in the very system they built. We have presidential candidates today saying that they're going to raise the retirement age to 70 when the life expectancy in the United States is only 77. So that means people will only have the opportunity to enjoy their life for 7 years. So yeah, of course you have Gen Z trying to prioritize living over working right now because they know, based on what they've seen, based on what generations before them are currently going through, there's no real moment in time that's built into the American infrastructure that allows for people to truly enjoy their lives.
I have a very real question. Why was living to work ever the norm? Because we keep getting called lazy and entitled for not living, breathing, dying for our jobs. Why was that ever expected?
Hi, I'm one of the Gen Z who that article exactly describes. I wanted to share my cautionary tale of how the American dream does feel a bit like a broken promise from the perspective of a Gen Z. Long story short, I feel like I did everything that I was supposed to be doing. I got good grades, I got into a good school, got a degree, I became a medical professional. I got the stable salaried job with the benefits that my immigrant parents had always dreamed I would get. And I actually managed to save enough money to get a down payment for a condo. And let me tell you, I was incredibly house poor. And this place was nothing fancy. Where I'm from, $1 million gets you a 2-bedroom condo, and the cheapest thing that you could ever find is maybe half of that, but nothing less. Growing up, I was always told that real estate was such a great investment and that you just needed to hold on long term. But I realized that I didn't care anymore. We all know that mortgage interest, condo fees, groceries, the cost of living has gone up exponentially. And I realized that my full-time salary was never going to be able to keep up with those rising costs. And I honestly felt like following the conventional advice put me in a worse spot. I actually ended up selling my house. That money that was my down payment is now doing way better in the stock market. I left my full-time stable job to pursue private practice and be self-employed. I work remotely, so I have so much more time and flexibility to focus on my health. The economy will get better one day, but I realized that I didn't want to spend these precious years to live for the potential of a better tomorrow. The main lesson I learned was just to do what makes me happy because the conventional advice does not apply in 2024. All the Gen Zs who are seeing this, I would love to hear how you are prioritizing living over working.
When I sit on panels, when people interview me, they always ask me the same question. Why is Gen Z so lazy? No. Gen Z's actually very smart. So let's get lazy out of our head. We're smart, and that's the reason why we get so much backlash. Hey, we have social media at the palm of our fingertips. So I can see online when somebody just got laid off in a very nasty, despicable way from a company. I can see online when somebody is not being paid the right amount of salary that they should be paid as their other colleagues. We can see it all online. But still, companies expect us to put all of our trust and all of our eggs in their basket that has a big hole at the bottom, and all the eggs are dropping through. That was a cute analogy. And since other generations don't want to change, we have to kind of like force you all to change. Because at the end of the day, we are the future of the workforce, baby. Can't get rid of us. And the only way that change is going to happen is if we continue to have hard set boundaries that we will not let up on. So remember, Gen Z, these companies have showed us that we are easily replaceable. So do not let that job stress you out. Continue to enjoy your life and do your job as well, but only during 9 to 5.
Gen Z is prioritizing living over working because they've seen that a 9-to-5 job isn't worth it. Hey, I had a 9-to-5 job, it was definitely worth it. But a lot's changed because when you think back to the 80s, the boomer generation, all they had to do was go to school, get good grades, and get a higher education at university for about £5,000, then secure a job working 40 hours a week for 40 years. That's true, we also didn't have to work night shifts or weekends. To be fair, we also had enough time to hang out with friends, and I was also able to afford to have 2 or 3 kids. Oh, and I can't forget my lovely house. Yeah, and it would take you only 30 years to pay this off, right? Yeah, and the mortgage accounted for about 20% of my income. Damn, and when you retire, you also get a state pension, a private pension, not to mention you also get to retire at the age of 60. Yeah, that's all a pretty standard thing. What are you talking about? Well, the reason I'm talking about this is now let's bring it to 2024. And if I work 40 hours a week for 40 years, does that mean I can now buy a house? Yeah, of course you can. No, sorry, I can't afford a house. But don't worry, we can rent. We can afford our Netflix, our food deliveries, even our phones. See, that doesn't sound too bad. So yeah, yeah, I guess I'll just rent forever. But at least university's cheap. Oh wait, it's not. It's £60,000. That's the same amount I paid for my house in the 80s. Yeah, well I guess all of my generation are lazy and not hardworking because otherwise we'd be at the same level as you. Exactly, I wish more of your generation was like that. I was kidding, the system's broken. There are ways for my generation to beat the system. If you want more of those tips, make sure you follow me.
Okay, but so are millennials. Just hear me out. My father is a boomer who had the same job for 26 years of my 32 years of life. In the last 5 years alone, he has moved to 3 different jobs. 10 years ago, he did not get why I had so much inconsistent work history on my resume. He did not understand why I could not save money. He did not understand why I had to go into debt to go to college. And we would get into confrontations about this all the time because he's like, I had the same job for 26 years. What's your excuse? Fast forward to my Gen Z little brothers going to the workforce at 16 and 17 recently. My dad does not ask me about work anymore. He doesn't ask me if I'm saving money anymore. He doesn't ask me how my credit is or anything. Because when my little brothers went into the workforce in the last few years, it all became very clear to my father that things were not the same as they were for his generation. And I just feel like this is something we don't talk about enough. So let's talk about it.
Time perfectly defines me and where I'm at in my life. Retirement age was 65 and then it was raised to 67, and there's rumors that they're going to raise it to 70 for millennials and Gen Zers. That's because people with old-fashioned, outdated boomer mentalities believe that we should be a slave to our job and that's the only way to live. It doesn't mean that all of us have to subscribe to that narrative. I'm not waiting for some ridiculous retirement age to start living my life. I'm gonna be living my life right now. Young people who want to experience life right now without waiting till they're old should only be pursuing career paths that offer a 4-day work week or remote options. There's already a massive organization that I'm part of that's fighting for the 4-day work week. The 4-day work week I'm talking about is not 4 days of working 10-hour days and then having 3 days off. I'm talking about working 4 days that are still only 8 hours and not having a loss to your salary. People might think that this sounds completely unreasonable, but most people know that if you work a 5-day work week, a lot of the tasks that you have to do on the Friday can be allocated into the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you didn't actually need to go to work on the Friday. All of those responsibilities could have just been spread out on the other 4 days of the week. Everything will still get done. The best possible solution to the work-life balance crisis that we're in is remote work altogether. Because when you work remotely, you can travel while you're working, which a lot of Gen Z and millennials are on the same page about this. We just want to be able to live our lives while we're young, and we don't want to be vilified for it. This is like the easiest way for companies to stop dealing with a high turnover rate from Gen Z and millennials. If we can just do our work wherever we want, we're not going to quit. We'll stay because we're happy and we'll stay. Obviously, this remote conversation doesn't apply to people who have physical hands-on jobs like people who work in medical, teachers, construction workers. Tomorrow's not promised. So to expect young people to wait around until they're old to finally start living life is absolutely absurd. I'm going to continue living my life right now in the moment, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Yes, we are absolutely going to go get them life experiences because y'all cheated the fuck out of us. We were told growing up, like all the time growing up, that if you go to college and get your degree, that's enough for life. If that doesn't work, you can go to trade school, get a license in your trade. That's enough for life. School's just not for you in general. The workforce is. There's something in the workforce for you. That's enough for life. And my generation grew up and did just that, and then y'all flipped the fucking chessboard on us and pulled out a new game. Now we looking at all our pieces on the ground, all our years of hard work and money that essentially means nothing now. And y'all got the nerve to call us lazy because we don't want to play the new game. We played the game originally, and you still cheated us. Why would we want to play the new game? And then got the audacity to call us lazy. Why would we play another game and a possibility of getting cheated again?
Gen Z is prioritizing living over working because they've seen the legacy of broken promises in corporate America. Gen Z work to live because they watched older generations suffer. Gen Z just doesn't see the same rewards for the hard work. As a result, they don't want to put work first at the expense of their personal and well-being. I had this conversation with my mom, who is a boomer, and I kind of told her about this, and she was totally a boomer response from her. She's like, if they don't want to work, they're going to be living out on the streets. They don't want to do anything. I'm like, Mom, you can't help it. You're a boomer. I understand, but we got to teach these boomers that just because they live to work doesn't mean we want to do that. So Gen Z is choosing to work to live rather than live to work, like the generations before them, because they're reaping fewer rewards for their hard work. Gen Z has very different attitudes to work than older generations because they're one of the first generations that won't have wealth that is greater than that of their parents or grandparents. Additionally, they have already experienced huge disruptions like the pandemic. They have more of an attitude of work to live as opposed to live to work that many of us grew up with. This is particularly true in the West. They have seen the legacy of all their broken promises. They promise you if you work for 30 years, you have the defined benefit pension, and you have retiree, medical care, etc. but none of that exists these days. So Gen Z has watched as millennials struggle through economic hardships, including multiple recessions and a pandemic, which had put a dent in the income and dreams of home ownership. The increased cost of living, skyrocketing house prices, and student debt has locked millennials out of the housing market and has made it difficult for them to accumulate wealth. This is true. I am the proof. I am the millennial. I got none of that. I'm still renting. I can't afford anything. Okay? As a result, Gen Zs are quiet quitting. You know what? I commend you. Finger snaps to you guys. You guys are leading the way. They're taking a step back at work because they're painfully aware that their hard work could essentially amount to nothing. And that is the truth. I know I feel that way. I went to college for how long and for what and for no reason because I didn't get any benefit out of it, honestly. I think when I did finally get my degree job, which was like 10, maybe 13 years later, I worked at a behavioral health center. I was only making $13 an hour. $13 an hour. That's poverty. I don't care what anybody says. Gen Z has received a lot of flack for their attitude at work. One survey last year found that 74% of managers say their Gen Z are the most challenging generation to work with. Meanwhile, celebrities like Whoopi Goldberg have dismissed economic struggles and said that they can't afford to buy a house because they're lazy and only want to work 4 hours a day. Honestly, Whoopi is right. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to work 4 hours a week, okay? Like maybe I feel like it's a little ironic because 4 hours a day is what Whoopi works, right? Maybe even one. How long is The View? A 1 hour show? In reality, Gen Z are facing setbacks because of the high levels of inflation and rising prices. They're even shopping less and eating at home more to save money. Young generation has hit back with some of these accusations saying that they're not prioritizing work because wages have stagnated. They're unfulfilled by the mundane 9-to-5 life and they're burned out. As a millennial, honestly, I feel the exact same as Gen Z does. I've been said this. I've been working since I was 16 years old off and on. I've had at least 20 jobs because me and jobs just don't go together. Okay. Most of the time, there's always something negative or bad about a job. I've never worked at like a great job before, and so, eventually I was like, you know what? If I can't work for somebody else, I'm just going to have to create my own job. And that's basically what I did. Okay. And I'm doing it right now.